When E.T. was released, the shelves were quite full of related goods in Japan too. It is hard to believe even now because he is not that adorable looking. However, right after seeing the movie, everyone is under Spielberg's spell. They think E.T. is an adorable creature, but now, 38 years after the film's release, that spell has long since been broken. When it was broadcast on TV, there were posts on Twitter saying that it was many times creepier than I thought, or I can't stand it. That's what people are saying now. Actually, it is more correct to feel that it is not as cute as I thought it would be, or creepy. Spielberg's order when designing the shape of this alien was to create an ugly creature that would only be loved by his mother. He added, but only the eyes should be intelligent. So the eyes should be Albert Einstein's eyes, or Hemingway's eyes. Anyway, he ordered to create such an ugly creature that this alien would only be loved by his mother. E.T. is a 115-minute movie. At the beginning of the film, the audience thinks, wow, this alien is ugly. But gradually, the audience accepts the alien. The reason E.T. is so ugly is because E.T. is a self-portrait of Spielberg, or at least that's how he sees himself. As a child, Spielberg had shaggy hair, was short, frail, skinny, and had a hooked nose. This was a huge handicap for him as a child. Spielberg said in an interview that he thought, "I'll never have a girlfriend." He was not exaggerating. Robert Zemeckis, who was younger than Spielberg, and John Williams, who was the same age as Spielberg, all directors had a girlfriend in their college years and got married. Or they married movie actresses in their 20s. Even George Lucas found a girlfriend in college and married her. Spielberg has been a big admirer of Walt Disney since his childhood. Walt Disney was so good-looking even as a child that he had a fan club in elementary school. So Walt Disney was very confident in his own appearance, so he was able to make presentations like that. But Spielberg was not the same. Spielberg is certainly popular in the film industry, but that's only because he can continuously make movies that are hits, and people listen to him. The moment he can no longer make hit movies, he must return to the place like hell. That was the mindset that Spielberg had until he was about 40 years old. So the outer space creatures in E.T., his private film about his childhood, must be absolutely ugly. George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, is Spielberg's best friend and rival at the same time. In Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, by George Lucas, there is a character named Yoda. When Spielberg saw this character, he was astonished. He did a very brave thing. That Yoda is actually George Lucas himself. Yoda is a small and ugly character. You might not know, but George Lucas is short. Plus, he is so shy that he has a very soft voice. Yoda is the character of such a shy George himself. Yoda lives alone on a planet with nothing but a damp swamp, but he is the strongest Jedi in the movie. That depicts George Lucas, who has no self-confidence and a soft voice, but has insanely high self-esteem. When it comes to making movies, George Lucas is more talented than Spielberg, and he himself appears in the movie as Yoda. He made Yoda the most powerful Jedi, and he made him the one who guides Luke Skywalker. It was a great shock to Spielberg that George Lucas was able to confess who he was through the character in the movie. That made Spielberg think of having a character that depicts himself in the film. When you think about it, after the movie Jaws, critics pointed out that Steven Spielberg's movies didn't portray people. Spielberg himself admits this and clearly states in an interview, "I have been able to portray people since the movie E.T." He was afraid to portray people. He can depict monsters and the fear of people being attacked by monsters. However, he cannot depict the people who are feeling fear. That is why, when he made the movie Jaws, he had a great deal of trouble with the original author. In the original novel, Jaws, it has a lot of information about people, like the reason why the police chief of New York came to such a small town and how his family is living, but in Spielberg's film, he cut all of those parts out. Why? Because Spielberg cannot portray people. Just as George Lucas confessed himself through Yoda in the film, Spielberg wanted to depict himself in the film. he created a creature absolutely ugly that only his mother could love. But by the end of the movie, everyone loves the ugly creature that can only be loved by its mother, which is what Spielberg wanted to make a movie about. That is where the movie E.T. starts. Elliot is Spielberg's alter ego. He's a little boy who's hurt by his parents' divorce, and it's a taboo at home, and his little sister is a tomboy, and he doesn't have many friends at school. He is Spielberg himself. In an interview later, the interviewer said to Spielberg, "It's amazing that you've been making movies since you were a child. You were making 8mm films in elementary school and 16mm films in middle school, so you must have been a visual genius since you were a child." Spielberg confessed, "I can say that I was rather pretending. That's true, I was making movies, but it wasn't because I liked them. When I pretended to shoot movies, the popular boys in my class would ask me to be in a movie because they were attention seekers. Then it looked like I was surrounded by popular boys in my class. I was making movies to raise my stage in the class." Either way, it is so true that Spielberg has gradually and incrementally improved his skills with the movies he has made since school. Luckily, he was talented in making movies. When he was in school, he had no friends to play with during breaks or to go home with. During the summer vacation, he had too much free time. So he started making movies to avoid facing this reality. As long as he was making movies, he could be Steve, who was obsessed with movies. Elliot, Spielberg's alter ego as a child, is skinny and has a high-pitched voice. People prefer a low, masculine voice in general. He also has no friends at school and follows his older brother, Michael, like a shadow. Spielberg was the one who taught Henry Thomas, who played Elliot, how to play the role. Spielberg's feelings gradually changed as he was coaching him. Producer Kathleen Kennedy has stated that Steve changed during the shooting of E.T. Spielberg also said in the making of the film that he was no longer afraid of portrait people. The original plan was to film everything from the children's point of view, you only saw the legs of the adults. That plan has gone off the rails. Storyboards for all Spielberg films up to that point were very precisely drawn. In Hollywood movies, by drawing storyboards precisely, it is possible to make special effects scenes follow logic and finish shooting the same scene at once. For example, if it was a special effects scene of a spaceship landing, all the scenes of the spaceship could be finished shooting at once. In big-budget films, precise storyboarding allows for budget control. However, it also still has a disadvantage. That is that the daily shooting schedule is all fixed. So you are kind of just doing the schedule. Spielberg is brilliant, so he can make films that way, and most of his past films were made that way. But for E.T., Spielberg only prepared a minimal script. At first they said he wrote about 40% of the book, but in fact he wrote very little. The first script was not a final draft, but Melissa came to the site in the morning and wrote the lines for the day. She wrote the lines in the morning and handed them to Spielberg. Then Spielberg would tell everyone, "Let's shoot this scene today." In addition, he shot in script order. They don't do that in Hollywood movies. In Hollywood movies, scenes of the same site are shot at once. However, Spielberg did not want to do that. He shot in script order so that the children in the film would not know the story. This is the very way Spielberg filmed his childhood. Every day his friends would ask him what he was going to shoot today, and he would think about what he was going to shoot that day, and then shoot it in one way or another, and then think about how he could edit it. The film Spielberg shot in script order in his school days. He would say, "He's coming today," or "She's coming today," and shoot anyway. His friends have no idea what kind of film it will be. But they believe that everything is already in Spielberg's mind. But nothing is in Spielberg's mind either. After he develops the films, he wonders how to edit them. He manages to finish the film. Spielberg's mother was a pianist and rich, so when he was a kid, they rented out a movie theater in town for one night to premiere his 16mm films. He took a limousine there and walked on the red carpet to get into the theater. They were a family with a lot of money, even though she was a single mother. He shot E.T. the same way he shot it as a child. A big-budget film couldn't do this. In a big-budget film, the insurance company gets involved. For example, the film company ensures that the film will be shot in 8 weeks. The insurance company pays if the shoot goes over 8 weeks. This means that the insurance company will come to the site every day to check the status of the film and say, "We have shot this much today, and there is only this much left to shoot, so the shooting will be completed in 8 weeks." This is the norm for big-budget Hollywood movies. However, Spielberg did not have an insurance company for his $10 million film. He submitted the script to Sidney Sheinberg and told him there would be changes later. In fact, Melissa wrote the script over coffee in the morning and Spielberg shot it. He could do that. By not having an insurance company involved in the film, all sorts of Hollywood norms could be removed and Spielberg could shoot the way he did when he was a kid. Perhaps the turning point could be the scene in the movie where the mother, Mary, is reading a bedtime story to her daughter, Gertie. Gertie is in bed and her mother is reading a Peter Pan storybook to her. I would say this scene is the turning point in the filming of the movie E.T. The story Mary is reading is about a fairy, Tinkerbell, who drinks poison instead of Peter Pan. Tinkerbell drinks the poison and almost dies. Gertie is so worried about her. Mary continues, "Tinkerbell could get well again if children believed in fairies. Do you believe it? Say quickly that you believe." Gertie, that cheeky little girl, almost cried and said, "I do." If you believe, clap your hands. We hear Gertie clap her hands. E.T. has leaned his head against the wall to hear the end of Mary's story. E.T. is watching them through the closet shutters. The camera angle is from E.T.'s perspective. E.T. keeps watching Mary and Gertie clapping. Then Elliot comes into the closet with a cardboard box. Elliot closes the closet shutters. But after healing Elliot's wound, E.T. opens the shutters again and continues to listen to Gertie and Mary. The reason E.T. missed the spaceship in the first place is because E.T. got obsessed with the night view of the small town outside of Los Angeles that he could see from the top of the hill. All the scenes in the film where you peeping, or eavesdropping are all symbols of strong desire and admiration. You can see it throughout the film. That is the grammar in this film. In other words, E.T. in the closet admires her mother's love. Of course, he has no concept of a mother because he is an evolved vegetable creature. However, E.T. is beginning to have an emotional fusion with Elliot. E.T. and Elliot have been emotionally merging with each other since they began living together. E.T. begins to watch and understand TV, and Elliot's physical condition is affected by E.T.'s physical condition. For example, when E.T. drinks beer and gets drunk, Elliot shows symptoms of getting drunk at school. This kind of fusion is happening. In addition, Elliot's love for his mother is also born in E.T., which he can't understand. E.T. is confused by the sudden appearance of feelings of affection for his mother, which is normal for Elliot. However, he begins to sneak a peek at Mary. Do you remember the scene when the children leave the house on Halloween? E.T. is dressed as a ghost, wearing a cloth with a hole around his eye part. Here in this scene, he stares through the holes at Mary from the bottom to the top. Of course, he is not staring at her in a sexual way. He is trying to get one last look at Mary's face in his eyes. But why does E.T. stare at Mary like this? On Halloween night, E.T. sets up a communicator in the woods and his spaceship is supposed to come and pick him up and take him home. That's why E.T. wanted to see Mary's face one last time. E.T. would never do that to Michael and Gertie, by the way. You can see his desire to see Mary's face one last time in this scene. However, Elliot is completely unaware of that E.T.'s feelings. No matter how much love for his mother grows in E.T., it is impossible for Elliot, who takes it for granted that he has love for his mother, to understand his feelings. On Halloween night, Elliot and E.T. place a communicator in the woods. It's a simple machine that combines a toy called speaker and amp. Spell with a record and a hanger. They try to communicate with E.T.'s group, but no response comes. The night goes on and Elliot catches pneumonia. Elliot loses sight of E.T. and goes home alone, When he gets home, Mary worries about him, saying he's so hot. Elliot asks Michael, is he here? Michael shakes his head no. You've got to find him, Mike. In the forest near the bald spot, Michael wanders through the forest. He sees lying in the creek, his head twisted at a grotesque angle, is E.T. Michael stoops down and gently lifts E.T.'s head. He lifts him and carries him into the forest. Michael stands under tree coverage as a helicopter flies over his head. When the helicopter is gone, he reaches into the trees and pulls out the bicycle. He hops on and rides down the road. E.T., wrapped from head to toe in the white ghost sheet, is in the basket. E.T. is back in his resting area. Mom, I have something really serious to tell you, he says. Before he opens the shower curtain, he says to Mary, just swear, the most excellent promise you can make. But she doesn't know what he's talking about. Michael gives up and opens the door. Elliot and E.T. are sitting on the floor of the shower stall. This is the scene. E.T., who has turned white and is dying, reaches out his hand and says, Mom. This is not what E.T. should have said, but what E.T. is thinking at this moment is, maybe this person can help me, so he says Mom to her and hangs on. But this is the look on Mary's face when he says that. You can tell it's a look of complete rejection. To Mary, E.T. is an ugly, evil creature who is harmful to her son. So she looks at him with a look of complete rejection. Do you remember the first time E.T. had an admiration for Mary, what she said to Gertie? She was reading Peter Pan for her daughter Gertie. She says she thinks Tinker Bell could get well again if children believed in fairies. Do you believe it? Say quickly that you believe. I do. If you believe, clap your hands. But Mary didn't believe in E.T. She completely rejected E.T.'s existence. Elliot was dying before her eyes. The ugly creature that is probably the cause of it is lying beside him. So, she pulls Elliot from the shower, grabs Gertie's hand and shoves Michael out the door. She leaves E.T. alone there. Simply put, E.T. died because Mary didn't believe in fairies. This also rhymes with a line from the movie. She says she thinks Tinker Bell could get well again if children believed in fairies. E.T. dies because Mary rejects him here. It is not because of sickness or the environment of the earth. As proof, E.T. says E.T. phoned home the moment he hears from the spaceship, and he is so full of energy that the flowers by his side start to bloom. As animals, we die mainly from physical causes. We die of disease, poison, or lack of nutrition. E.T., on the other hand, is completely different. E.T. is not damaged by physical factors. Moreover, E.T. has the power to heal injuries. Their deaths are caused by mental factors. Despair causes E.T. to die. Again, you remember why Steven Spielberg made E.T. such an ugly being. Because he wanted to portray him as an ugly creature who is only loved by his mother. In other words, that is the scene where the ugly creature who is only loved by his mother is rejected even by his mother. This is what Spielberg wanted to film. Spielberg wanted the film to not be a simple story in which E.T. is loved by everyone. Instead, he wanted to tell the story of an ugly creature who is loved only by his mother, who is rejected even by his mother, but overcomes his despair and loneliness and makes a comeback. He wanted to depict the rebirth after going through this despair, so in this scene, you see a dying E.T. in the bathroom reaching out and saying, Mom, you move incredibly. But you don't really know why you feel that way. Because Spielberg brings it to you through the images. The killer of E.T. is Elliot's mother, Mary. It's interesting that you can see it very clearly. And of course Mary doesn't realize this. Mary is unaware that she killed this creature. But Elliot and E.T. are aware that she killed him. In the last scene, E.T. says goodbye to Gertie and Michael, but does not even look at Mary. Before E.T. goes out into the woods on Halloween night, he looks for Mary and stares at her through a hole in the cloth. Yet, in the last scene, E.T. does not look at Mary even once. E.T. has given up on his mother's love to such an extent that his heart has left her. So E.T. leaves the earth, heartbroken by the rejection. Elliot also becomes able to know the feelings of E.T. at this time. His father left his family and divorced. His mother is the one Elliot must protect. The difficult environment of accepting his parents' divorce prevented Elliot from growing up. His mother Mary almost killed E.T., who Elliot loves. But he accepts it and decides to continue to live with his mother. His father left the family and went to Mexico. That too he decides to accept. Unless he accepts these two things, Elliot will never grow up. This is the point of the film. But the TV director has cut some important scenes so the viewer won't receive it. In the last scene, E.T. says to Elliot, "Come." E.T. invites him to the spaceship. Then Elliot replies to him, "Stay." Elliot chooses stay, because if he goes, he ends up like his father. His father abandoned his family and went to Mexico. Elliot doesn't want to do the same thing to his family. In the middle of the film, Elliot smells his father's shirt and guesses the cologne sea breeze. Elliot loves his father much more than his brother Michael, and is the only child to have inherited his dark-haired genes. There should have been a scene in the last scene that shows Elliot's feeling of "I'll never be like my father." That's why Elliot says stay, when E.T. asks him to come with him. As for the part that the TV director cut for the TV broadcast version, I guess that they did it because they thought they were not important parts in the film. However, now that I think about it, the director may have cut it because it could have shocked the viewers, especially small children. For example, the scene where E.T. is dying and Elliot says to Keys, "They'll just cut him all up." Keys can't answer anything. It's quite a shocking scene. They are broadcasting not only a movie program but also a program for families including small children. So, it may be better for them to feel sad simply because E.T. is dying. It may have been a right decision to cut out the part where you can see E.T. is going to be dissected for the sake of scientific interest. This is not something that children should be exposed to. Though cutting this part definitely diminishes the artistry of the film. In today's society, people usually have strong rejection reactions when they see content that is sexual, violent, offensive, or contains abuse of children or animals. People place more importance on the viewer's feelings than on the artistry of the film. As a result, such scenes are being removed more and more. This is why I strongly recommend you to watch the original version of the film. There is an edited version made by Spielberg in 2002. The scene where the cops block the way with guns to stop Elliot and his men. The gun was replaced by a walkie-talkie. Spielberg later said that he should not have done that, but he also said, "We shouldn't put it back in again." When I read that interview, I wondered, why not? He can put it back if he feels that way. But now I think Spielberg, being in Hollywood in the US, felt the social changes more keenly, read the times ahead, and replace the scene. Also, such editing by him might have made the re-release of the DVD or re-release in theaters in the US and around the world much smoother. See you in the next video. Ciao.